Hi everyone, this is Mark Williamson. It is Monday, November 16, 2020. It's about 19:20 hours Eastern Standard Time here in the United States, in South Carolina. Very quick update on the election. What I'm seeing here is very clear effort to sway this. Okay, so one story that I'm following is there are certain states where you register by political party. I used to live in Nevada, and in Nevada you register by political party. They also do that in California, Arizona, and a few other states. Where I currently live now in South Carolina, you do not. You just register, and then if you want to vote in one primary or the other, they mark which primary you're voting in. And then in Texas, it was kind of the same way. You register, vote, then you show up at the polls. You say, I want to vote in the Republican primary or in the Democrat primary. When I lived in Nevada, you had to pre-register with one political party or the other. So if you wanted to vote in the Republican Party, you had to have your registration in for the Republican Party early on. If you chose not to vote in the Republican or Democrat primary, if you chose to register as a nonpartisan, then you, as a nonpartisan, did not vote in the Republican primary or in the Democrat primary. Okay, why is this significant? In these states where you register by party, they know your party affiliation because it's a matter of the record. And that gets to be an issue because in some of these states, the poll workers were handing out, they had Sharpies, which are permanent markers. And my friends in South Africa, it's late if anybody's listening there. They have permanent markers called Sharpies. And normally at the polls, everybody would have the poll workers would have a black pen. So you get your ballot, they give you a black pen, you mark your ballot, you put your ballot in the ballot box, give them the pen back. What we saw this time, and it was fairly widespread, was people were going to get their ballots, and some people were being told, here, take this Sharpie. Other people were being given the black pen. And the people that were getting the Sharpie thought that this was kind of strange because they were not used to marking with a Sharpie. They were used to marking with just a regular pen. But the poll worker gave them the Sharpie, says, well, okay. And so they start marking their ballot, and they notice it was bleeding through. It wasn't bleeding through a little, it was bleeding through a lot. It was bleeding through a lot to the point where if you flipped the ballot over to mark the other side, you couldn't tell what was going on. It's like it bled through to the point where it was goofing up the vote on the other side. And so, long story short, what happened, it looks like what happened is when certain people, read Republicans, came up to get their ballots, they handed them a Sharpie knowing that the Sharpie would bleed through and it would invalidate the ballot. This was fairly widespread, and it appeared to be fairly deliberate. It was the first time we'd seen Sharpies getting used in some of these jurisdictions. Again, this was happening out west. It wasn't here with me. This is what I'm getting reports of out west. So they deliberately disenfranchised certain voters, read Republican voters, by giving them a marker, a permanent marker, a magic marker that would actually, it would bleed through so much that it would invalidate the paper ballot and make it illegible. And it looks very deliberate, very selective. Okay, there's another issue with these voting machines. I've talked about these voting machines. If you listen to some of the other audios, there's a long history with them. Long story short, and there's a lot of news on there. The news is not about, let me tell you what the news is first. There's a lot of information out there. A lot of connections get made with the people who make these machines. Turns out that they were involved in elections in other places where either they wanted a fraudulent outcome, like Venezuela, excuse me, where they went in and they created a fraudulent outcome in a place where people expected a good election, and then there was some prosecutions involved and stuff like that. What they do, you write an algorithm, and you got all these thousands and hundreds of thousands of lines of code inside the machine, and they write an algorithm that if you're going to vote for Trump, then it like maybe randomizes it, and it throws 1/9. It maybe takes every 9th vote for Trump and gives it to Biden or something like that. And so this is very significant, and it's very hard to detect. Okay, if if Trump has a 52% lead and to Biden's 48, and we're assuming no other candidates or anything like that, and then if you take 1/9 of that, that's 5%. It's almost 6% of the total vote, and you subtract that from Trump, he goes from 52 down to 46, and then you add that to Biden, he goes from 48 up to 54. And you wouldn't even have to throw 1/9 of it. You know, you could throw like 1/11 or 1/12 and swing the election. People would not notice this because it's close enough to what they were expecting to see. It's close enough to the polling that they'd think, okay, well, the pollsters had it wrong. We had it a little bit long, but this is within the tolerance. Because, you know, they always talk about tolerance and stuff like that when they're doing the polling. They always say, well, it's got this margin of error. And so here you are, you're getting something that's kind of within the margin of error. Okay, I'm not hearing specifics. I haven't seen or heard any specifics on these algorithms and what was done. That's one way you could do it. That would be a smart way to do it. That's the kind of thing I was always concerned about. But I haven't seen anything specifically on how it is being done or how it has been done. However, there's definite stuff going on that has skewed this. It has impacted the elections. These machines were widely used. These algorithms could conceivably have been out there in a lot of places, including the key states. Now, what's a key state? Remember that some states, they vote Republican. On average, the state goes Republican, and it's a safe Republican state. Those electoral votes are going to go to the Republican candidate. Other states are Democrats. You have other states that are battleground states. They're swing states. Now, within a battleground state, within a swing state, there are people who vote Republican. There are people who vote Democrat. So, but there are people who might go one way one year or another way another year, or else there are people, those are swing voters, by the way. If you vote Republican in one year, Democrat in another year, swing voter. The other type of voter to watch for is the split ticket voter. They might vote Republican for congressman but Democrat for the senator, so they're voting a split ticket, not a straight ticket. And so these are the people you're looking for. You want to get their votes. The swing and split ticket voters in the battleground states those are the people that decide the presidential election, because everybody else is either voting Republican or Democrat. I vote Republican. All right, nobody's battling over my vote. So it's these swing votes, the swing voters and these split ticket voters, but not all of them. You don't have to go to a place that's a heavy Democrat state or a heavy Republican state and battle for those people. You're going to the swing and split ticket voters in the battleground states. And that's what they wind up doing. And so if you can go to those jurisdictions where you've got those people that they go back and forth between parties, and then you take, 1/10 of the votes for Trump, and you electronically give them to Biden, then Biden wins, and nobody is the wiser unless somebody actually spots it in the code, unless they actually go back and analyze that code. That would be one of the few ways of catching them. So very sneaky, difficult to do. There's a lot of evidence now accumulating that did indeed happen. We've got a pattern of conduct on the parts of people. If you see it in the news, you got a pattern of conduct where these people have been caught doing this kind of thing. They've gotten in trouble for it. Were preparations to do this type of thing. There's a lot of evidence suggesting that did indeed happen. And there's a lot of evidence suggesting it was decisive. There's a lot of evidence suggesting that Trump did indeed win, that the guy who had all of these rallies with all of these thousands of people did indeed win. The guy who was particularly popular among groups that traditionally vote Democrat, that he got their votes and won. And there's a lot of evidence that suggests that the guy that didn't have many rallies people were joking around that he was hiding in his basement. When he had a rally, he had like 6 people, each wearing a mask, sitting 10 feet apart from each other. All right, the evidence suggests, they're trying to tell us Biden won, but the evidence suggests that no, Trump did indeed win, and the election was stolen. That's what the evidence is looking at. Finally, there is a lot of reports that I'm getting that Facebook is suppressing. Now we know that they like to fact check and they like to offer you, information on something, and they try to tell you, well, this is not totally true. But it's beyond that. It's starting to look like they are suppressing credible articles from mainstream news sources that are talking about issues with this election. So if you want to suppress some crazy conspiracy theorist, that's fine. But when you are shutting down a big name at a big network because you don't like the story, that is a further effort to sway the election. That is a further interference in the election. Prohibiting people from talking freely about the election is election interference. And the evidence suggests that that is going on. Okay, so there's one question coming up. Objectively, could Trump have lost the election? Objectively, I don't think he did. And here's why. He won the last election, and that was at a time when a lot of Republicans were keeping their distance from him. I kept my distance from him. He said and tweeted dumb things. I thought he was playing us. I didn't particularly like him. So I went in, I voted the straight Republican ticket, except at the top of the ticket I did not mark the ballot. There's no way in hell I was going to vote for Hillary Clinton. I wouldn't vote for her with a gun to my head. All right, but I have occasionally not supported a Republican because I was apprehensive. And I thought we were being played. Okay, turns out, Trump has a pretty good record. He very impressive in foreign affairs, good job with the economy, a lot of things there. I still have some apprehension about him. But the point is that I've warmed up to him. And the point is that from what I can tell, a lot of Republicans have warmed up to him. So, he won the last time. He's now actually a stronger candidate with what should be his base, the Republicans. He also got a lot of people who were not normally voting or who often voted Democrat to vote and to vote Republican in that election for him. He picked up a lot of people last time. That trend also continued. And then in contrast to that, Biden was not running. He didn't have a ground campaign anywhere. He didn't have much of a campaign anywhere. Every once in a while you'd see him climb up out of his basement and talk to 6 people that were all sitting 10 feet apart. Okay? There weren't these big rallies. You just didn't see a lot of that stuff. And then finally, the other thing is people that were these swing and split ticket voters that I talked about were looking at what was going on this summer. People understand. The news doesn't get that. But people understand that the Democrat politicians, and I'm not talking about the good rank and file Democrats. I'm not talking about Democrat candidates for local office here. I'm talking about the big players, the big names, may not necessarily be a national political leader, but we're talking about somebody of national renown. So, for example, like Mayor Wheeler in Portland, Oregon. He's not obviously a federal official, but he's famous around the country. Okay, so people are looking at these people, and they're recognizing that the Democratic Party has become increasingly radicalized. It is the party of arson. It is the party of looting. It is the party of rioting. And that frightened a lot of people. Whereas Trump was the law and order candidate. And so a lot of these people who might have gone for the Democratic candidate because they're concerned about social issues or medical school, whatever, but they're looking at security, domestic security. They're looking at their neighborhoods getting burned, their businesses getting shut down. A lot of these people went for Trump. And so consequently, you've got a guy who won last time with much more support this time running against a much weaker candidate. And so objectively, could Trump have lost? I don't think so. I don't think so. This should have been a pretty clear-cut 55 or 60% for Trump to 45 or 40% for Biden. And electorally, this should have been kind of almost a landslide. It should have been at least 2/3 of the Electoral College going for Trump. So I do not think that objectively that Trump lost. My gut is that he won. And I've been thinking this all along as I'm looking at it. Anyway, I don't mean to keep this so long here. One other question I'm seeing as I'm looking at this. Did Russia get involved with this outcome? I'm not seeing, I haven't seen yet any information on anything like that about specific foreign powers being involved. There are transnational companies involved with the voting machines who in turn are involved with foreign powers, and Russia's name has not come up as one of those foreign powers that they're involved in. So I'm not seeing any evidence one way or another. I don't really want to speculate on that. I will tell you that there are some foreign powers, and I don't have Russia necessarily in mind here, but there are some foreign powers that they're looking and they're seeing one person who's kind of sort of standing up for U.S. interests and making the U.S. stronger and making NATO stronger, and then they're seeing another guy that has a long history in Washington of wheeling and dealing and influencing, peddling. And that's all I really want to say on that right now. So hello everybody, thank you for listening. Hey Mathis, hey Mandy. I will catch up with you guys later. Take care, bye-bye.